Dr. Sarah Chen wiped the sweat from her brow as she carefully brushed away centuries of sand from what appeared to be ancient pottery shards. The New Mexico sun beat down mercilessly on her archaeological dig site, but she barely noticed, too absorbed in her work. 3 weeks of excavation had yielded promising results, suggesting human habitation in this area far earlier than previously thought. As she reached for her water bottle, a sonic boom shattered the desert silence. Sarah instinctively ducked, dropping her brush as she watched a streak of silver tear across the sky. The object, whatever it was, left a trail of smoke and flame before disappearing behind a distant mesa. Seconds later, the ground trembled with the impact. Sarah's scientific curiosity overcame her initial fear. After quickly packing her essential gear and GPS unit, she headed toward the crash site. The trek took nearly an hour across the rugged terrain, but the column of smoke made navigation simple. As she crested a ridge, she stopped dead in her tracks. Below her lay a crater about 30 feet wide, and in its center sat what could only be described as a spacecraft. Its sleek, organic design suggested something grown rather than built, with curves that seemed to defy conventional engineering. But what truly caught her attention was the figure pulling itself from the wreckage. The alien stood at least 7 feet tall, its body covered in what appeared to be living armor that shifted colors like an octopus's skin. Despite its intimidating appearance, Sarah could tell from its movements that it was injured. As she watched, it collapsed against the side of the craft, purple fluid seeping from a gash in its side. Sarah's hand trembled as she reached for her satellite phone, but she hesitated. The creature's labored breathing and obvious distress triggered something deeper than fear, compassion. Making her decision, she began carefully descending into the crater. The alien's head snapped up at her approach, 4 eyes focusing on her with startling intensity. It raised what appeared to be a weapon, but the movement caused it to grimace in pain, dropping the device. "I'm not here to hurt you," Sarah said, holding up her empty hands. "I want to help." The alien studied her for a long moment before speaking, its voice a surprising mix of clicks and perfectly accented English. "Human, you should run. They are coming." "Who's coming?" Sarah asked, already pulling medical supplies from her pack. "Let me look at that wound first." "The Harvester Empire," the alien replied, watching with fascination as she prepared to treat its injury. "I am Kavor, a scout commander of the Resistance. My mission was to warn your world, but they detected my approach." As Sarah cleaned the wound, which seemed to be already clotting thanks to the alien's advanced biology, Kavor explained the situation. The Harvesters were a species that consumed the resources of entire planets, leaving them barren. Earth had been marked as their next target. But the Resistance, composed of survivors from other worlds, had been working to stop their advance. "Your weapons are primitive compared to theirs," Kavor said, wincing as Sarah applied pressure to the wound. "Your world will fall unless..." "Unless what?" "Unless you help me contact my people. The Resistance has technology we could share, but more importantly, we've learned that every world the Harvesters conquered fell because they fought alone. Together, we might stand a chance." Sarah finished bandaging the wound, her mind racing with the implications. "There's a research facility about 20 miles from here. I have colleagues there who could help, people I trust. But we'll need to move fast, before whoever's chasing you catches up." Kavor's armor shifted to match the color of the surrounding rocks. "The pursuit ships will be here within 3 hours. If they find me, they'll learn of the Resistance's plans. Everything will be lost." "Then we better get moving," Sarah said, helping the alien to its feet. "And Kavor, welcome to Earth." As they began their journey across the desert, Sarah couldn't help but smile at the irony. She had come here looking for evidence of ancient human history, only to become part of humanity's first steps into a much larger, more dangerous universe. The real question was, would Earth's people rise to the challenge, or would they become just another fallen civilization, their artifacts buried in the sand for some future archaeologist to discover? The sun was setting behind them as they made their way toward civilization, casting long shadows across the desert floor. In the growing darkness, Sarah could have sworn she saw lights in the sky, moving in formation. The race against time had begun. The Southwest Research Institute's security checkpoint loomed ahead in the darkness, its floodlights creating a pool of harsh illumination in the desert night. Sarah's ancient pickup truck rattled as she slowed to a stop, her heart pounding. In the passenger seat, Cavor had compressed their massive frame into an almost impossible position, their adaptive armor maintaining perfect camouflage against the truck's interior. Dr. James Martinez, Sarah's longtime colleague and the facility's head of experimental physics, was waiting for them at the gate. One look at his face told Sarah he hadn't entirely believed her cryptic phone call about a revolutionary discovery. That skepticism vanished the moment Cavor unfolded from the vehicle, their armor shifting through a spectrum of colors before settling into its natural iridescent state. "Dios mío," James whispered, unconsciously taking a step back. Then his scientific curiosity took over. The adaptive properties of that biomechanical integration. "It's extraordinary." "We don't have time for analysis," Cavor said, their four eyes scanning the sky. "The Harvester scout ships will have detected the energy signature from your facility. They'll be here soon." James quickly led them through a series of security doors, using his override codes to bypass the normal protocols. The few staff members present at this late hour stared in shock as they passed, but James's presence seemed to prevent any panic. He brought them to a secure laboratory deep within the facility, one Sarah had never seen before. "Welcome to Project Breakthrough," James said, activating a series of holographic displays. "We've been studying anomalous signals from deep space for the past 3 years. I'm guessing you're connected to them." Cavor moved to the displays, their fingers dancing across the interface with practiced ease. "These are resistance communications. Your detection capabilities are more advanced than we realized. Perhaps humanity is more prepared than we thought." The alien brought up a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy, highlighting a pattern of destroyed solar systems. The harvesters moved methodically, consuming all resources from a planet before moving to the next. They've been working their way through this spiral arm for millennia. Earth is their next target. Sarah studied the destruction pattern. Why haven't they been stopped? Surely other civilizations must have tried. "Many did," Cavor replied, their voice heavy with memory. "The harvesters exploit a fundamental weakness in most sentient species, the instinct to protect one's own world first. Each civilization they encountered tried to defend themselves alone, hoarding their technology and resources. Each fell in isolation." James was already at his computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. "We need to contact the government, the military." "No," Cavor interrupted. "The moment your world's governments know of the threat, they'll react exactly as others did, attempting to prepare individual defenses that the harvesters will easily overwhelm. We need something different." "What do you suggest?" Sarah asked. "The Resistance has developed technology that could help Earth defend itself, but it requires adaptation, innovation. From what we've observed of humans, you excel at both. You take existing ideas and transform them in ways their original creators never imagined." James pulled up classified files showing experimental defense systems. "We've been developing quantum entanglement communication, gravity manipulation theories, even primitive energy shields. But they're all theoretical." "Perhaps not anymore," Cavor said, connecting a small device to the computer system. Complex schematics began flowing across the screens. "These are the basic principles behind our technology. Show me what human creativity can do with them." For the next hour, they worked frantically. James's team was assembled, sworn to secrecy, and set to work integrating the alien technology with Earth's existing systems. Sarah found herself translating between the scientists and Cavor, her archaeological training helping her bridge the gap between two very different ways of thinking. The facility's alarm system shattered their concentration. On the security feeds, they watched 3 sleek shapes descend from the clouds. Harvester scout ships. Their design was angular and predatory, a stark contrast to the organic curves of Kavor's vessel. "They're scanning for my energy signature," Kavor said, their armor rippling with tension. "Your facility's shielding won't hide us for long." James looked up from his work, his eyes bright with excitement despite the danger. "Maybe we don't need to hide." "Sarah, remember that crazy theory you had about the Pueblo structures acting as resonance chambers?" Sarah's eyes widened as she caught his meaning. "The same principles could apply to energy signatures. Instead of blocking them, we could reflect and amplify them," Kavor finished, understanding dawning in all four eyes. "Create a cascade of false signatures that would confuse their sensors." They worked with desperate speed, repurposing the facility's equipment to create an improvised array of energy reflectors. As the harvester ships drew closer, James activated the system. The effect was immediate. Dozens of false energy signatures bloomed across the desert, creating a maze of potential targets. Through the laboratory windows, they watched the harvester ships circle in confusion, their precise search patterns breaking down as they chased phantom signals. After several tense minutes, the ships withdrew, climbing back into the night sky. "That," Kavor said with something like awe in their voice, "is exactly the kind of innovation we need. You took a simple archaeological observation and turned it into a defensive system in minutes. The harvesters won't expect that kind of adaptability." Sarah watched the ships disappear into the darkness, knowing this was only the beginning. "How long do we have before they return in force?" "Days, perhaps weeks if we're fortunate. But when they come, they'll bring their full invasion fleet." James was already back at his computer, sending encrypted messages to trusted colleagues around the world. "Then we better make every minute count. The question is, how do we prepare the world for what's coming without creating the very panic and isolation you warned us about?" Sarah looked at the archaeological tools still in her pack, then at the advanced alien technology surrounding them. "We do what humans have always done. We adapt, we innovate, and most importantly, we work together. The harvesters expect us to fight like every other world they've conquered. Let's show them why that's a mistake." The next week passed in a blur of activity. Sarah watched in amazement as James's network of scientists grew exponentially, each new member carefully vetted and brought into what they now called Project Phoenix. Rather than approaching governments directly, they worked through universities, research institutes, and private companies, creating a web of collaboration that spread across the globe. Kavor's wound had healed remarkably fast, their living armor accelerating the process. They spent hours sharing knowledge with Earth's scientists, but more importantly, learning from them. "Your species has a unique way of approaching problems," they observed one morning, watching a team of engineers repurpose a quantum computer. "You don't just adapt technology, you transform it." Sarah had taken on the role of coordinator, her experience piecing together historical narratives, helping her see patterns in the flood of innovations emerging from the global team. The results were extraordinary. A materials science lab in Tokyo had combined Kavor's armor technology with existing metamaterial research, creating adaptive camouflage that could be mass-produced. Engineers in Brazil had integrated alien power systems with their renewable energy grid, developing a network that could actually absorb and redirect enemy weapons fire. Most promising was the work being done right there in New Mexico. James and his team had taken the principles behind Kavor's faster-than-light drive and applied them in a way that shocked even their alien ally. Instead of using the technology for space travel, they had created localized fields that could selectively alter the flow of time within a small area. "It's not technically time travel," James explained, his exhaustion evident but eyes bright with excitement. "More like time manipulation. We can create bubbles where time moves faster or slower relative to the outside world. The energy cost is enormous, but it gives us an edge they won't expect," Sarah finished. She had seen the test footage. Missiles seemingly frozen in midair, defense systems reacting at impossible speeds, ships trapped in zones of accelerated time until their hulls aged centuries in seconds. Kavor's armor shifted through shades of blue. What Sarah had learned was their expression of amazement. My people used this technology for centuries, but we never imagined applying it this way. The Harvester's tactical systems are based on predictable physics. This will shatter their models. The facility's alert system interrupted them. Sarah's heart jumped until she realized it wasn't an attack warning. It was their deep space monitoring network. The message that followed chilled her blood. Multiple objects detected accelerating from the Kuiper belt. The automated system announced. Configuration matches Harvester signatures. Estimated arrival. 72 hours. The room erupted into controlled chaos. James immediately began coordinating with other facilities, while Kivor interfaced with their own equipment, a full invasion fleet. They confirmed grimly. At least 30 capital ships, with hundreds of support vessels. Sarah felt the weight of history pressing down on her. How many other civilizations had faced this moment? How many had fallen? But looking around the room at the determined faces of her fellow humans, she saw something different. Where others had tried to stand alone, humanity had already begun to unite. "Show me the distribution of our defense systems," she requested. A holographic globe materialized, showing networks of interconnected nodes spanning continents. Traditional military installations glowed alongside civilian research centers, private space programs, and repurposed satellite networks. It wasn't a single shield or weapon. It was thousands of innovations working in concert. "The Harvesters expect us to either submit or try to fight them conventionally," Kivor said, studying the display. This is unlike anything they've encountered." James joined them, his tablet displaying incoming updates from around the world. The quantum entanglement network is online. Every major center can now coordinate instantaneously, without relying on traditional communications they could intercept. Sarah pointed to patterns in the defense grid. "Look at how each region has adapted the technology differently. The Australian outback teams are using the desert itself as a weapon, turning the sand into programmable matter. European facilities have integrated their particle accelerator network into a continental-scale energy web." "And these?" Kivor asked, indicating scattered points of unusual activity. "Those," James said with a hint of pride, "are what we call our wild cards. Individual innovators, garage inventors, independent researchers, all working on applications of your technology that even we don't fully understand yet. The beauty of human creativity is its unpredictability." A new alert drew their attention. The resistance forces Kivor had finally managed to contact were on their way, but they wouldn't arrive before the Harvester fleet. Earth would face the initial assault alone. "We should evacuate key personnel to hardened facilities," Kivor suggested, but Sarah shook her head. "No, we stay right here, in the open. In fact," she turned to James with a gleam in her eye, "remember that crazy idea you had about using the facility itself as a giant resonance chamber?" James's tired face broke into a grin. "The one you said would probably collapse the building." "That's the one. How fast can we scale it up?" Kivor watched the exchange with growing understanding. "You intend to make this location a target." "The most obvious target we can," Sarah confirmed. "The Harvesters will detect the concentration of alien technology here. They'll think they found your hidden base. And when they commit their forces to attack," James was already pulling up schematics, "they'll find out exactly what happens when you underestimate human ingenuity." Sarah finished. As they began their preparations, Sarah glanced at the desert sunrise through the laboratory windows. Somewhere out there, humanity's greatest challenge was approaching. But for the first time since Kivor's arrival, she felt something more powerful than fear: hope. The Harvesters thought they were facing just another isolated world. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its weapons or technology, but in its infinite capacity for adaptation and its unwavering spirit of cooperation in the face of overwhelming odds. They arrived at dawn, their massive ships darkening the sky over every major city on Earth. The Harvester fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their angular vessels blocking out the rising sun. It was a sight designed to inspire terror, a display of overwhelming force that had broken the will of countless civilizations before. But Earth was waiting. From her position in the New Mexico facility's control center, Sarah watched the global defense network light up. The quantum entanglement communication system hummed with activity as coordinates and tactical data flowed seamlessly between defense points. Kavor stood beside her, their armor shifting through patterns of anticipation. "Their initial scans have begun," Kavor announced, reading data from their own systems. "They're following standard invasion protocols, mapping defense installations, power grids, population centers." "Good," James said from his station. "Let them look. Every scan they make feeds directly into our adaptive systems." The Harvester's first strike came without warning, a simultaneous assault on what they perceived as Earth's primary military installations. Massive energy beams lanced down from their capital ships, only to encounter something unprecedented. As the beams struck Earth's atmosphere, they met networks of quantum-linked particles spread through the air itself. The energy didn't just disperse, it was captured, redirected, and fed into the very defense systems it was meant to destroy. Each attack merely strengthened Earth's shields. "They're recalibrating," Kavor reported, their voice tense with excitement. This has never happened before. Their weapons are supposed to be unstoppable." "Nothing's unstoppable," Sarah replied, watching the tactical displays. "You just have to understand its nature and find a way to turn it back on itself." The Harvester fleet shifted tactics, launching waves of fighter craft. These smaller vessels were designed to overwhelm planetary defenses through sheer numbers. They swept down in perfect formation, only to encounter humanity's next surprise. Across the globe, time dilation fields activated. Pockets of accelerated and decelerated time created an impossible battlefield. Fighter squadrons found themselves flying into zones where seconds stretched into hours, their perfectly coordinated attacks falling into chaos. Others hit patches where time flowed backward relative to their instruments, sending their targeting systems into confusion. "Multiple ships breaking formation," James called out, monitoring the global situation. Their tactical AI can't compensate for the temporal distortions. But the Harvesters were not easily deterred. Their capital ships began deploying ground forces, massive mechanized units that dropped from low orbit. These walking fortresses had crushed the armies of dozens of worlds, their weapons capable of leveling cities. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Now, across 6 continents, the ground itself seemed to come alive. The programmable matter developed by combining alien technology with Earth's nanotechnology research activated. Roads liquefied and reformed around the invaders' feet, buildings shifted like living things, and the very terrain became a weapon. In the Australian outback, billions of grains of sand transformed into microscopic robots, stripping away at Harvester armor like an intelligent sandstorm. European particle accelerator networks created corridors of altered physics that turned the invaders' own mass against them. In the Amazon, reprogrammed atmospheric processors generated localized storms that turned rain into programmable conducting fluid, short-circuiting Harvester systems. Their command and control network is showing signs of strain, Kavor reported, their armor flickering with barely contained excitement. They've never encountered resistance on so many different fronts, using so many different methods. The Harvester response was predictable. They targeted what they believed to be the source of Earth's unexpected capabilities. Dozens of ships began converging on the New Mexico facility. "Right on schedule," James said grimly, initiating the facility's transformation sequence. The entire research complex began to shift, the buildings themselves incorporating the same programmable matter technology they had developed. Walls became weapons, Corridors turned into trap-laden mazes, and the central tower rose like a living thing. Energy signatures are peaking, Sarah announced, watching the readings climb. The resonance chamber is at full capacity. The first harvester ship fired, its energy beam striking the facility dead center. But instead of destruction, the beam's energy was caught, amplified, and reflected back through the carefully arranged network of modified buildings. The result was beyond even their most optimistic calculations. The reflected energy pulse created a cascading reaction through the linked harvester ships, their own power systems becoming part of the feedback loop. Ships began falling from the sky, their sophisticated technology turned into a liability. Multiple capital ships going dark, Kavor reported, their voice filled with disbelief. Their entire command structure is in chaos. This is unprecedented. But Sarah knew better than to celebrate too early. The remaining harvester ships were regrouping, adapting to Earth's defenses. This was just the first exchange in what would be a desperate battle for survival. Yet as she watched humanity's impossibly diverse array of countermeasures in action, she felt a surge of pride. They expected us to behave like every other world they've conquered, she said, watching the tactical displays. To either cower in fear or throw ourselves uselessly against their superior technology. Instead, James added, his fingers flying over his controls, we showed them what happens when you give humans a problem to solve, and the tools to solve it with. The battle was far from over, but Earth had already achieved something unprecedented. They had shocked the harvesters, thrown them off balance, and shown them that this invasion would be like nothing they had ever encountered before. The real question was, could humanity's ingenuity and adaptability overcome the harvesters' vast experience and overwhelming numbers? As if in answer to her unspoken question, new alerts began flashing across their screens. The harvester fleet was launching its second wave, and this time, they weren't holding anything back. The second wave of the harvester assault was unlike anything Earth had ever witnessed. The aliens had abandoned their usual methodical approach, unleashing everything they had in a desperate bid to overwhelm humanity's unexpected defenses. The sky burned with energy weapons, and their remaining ships released swarms of autonomous combat drones. They're adapting to our time dilation fields, James reported, his voice tense as he watched the tactical displays. The harvester drones were now moving in randomized patterns, making it harder to trap them in temporal bubbles. Sarah studied the shifting battle patterns, her archaeologist's mind recognizing something familiar in the chaos. Look at their formation changes. They're not just adapting, they're learning. Each failed attack teaches them something new. Kavor's armor had shifted to a deep crimson, reflecting their concern. This is why they've been unstoppable for so long. Their neural networks evolved during combat, finding solutions to any defense. But Sarah noticed something else. James, are you seeing this? They're focusing all their processing power on counteracting our most obvious defenses. The time fields, the programmable matter. Which means they're not watching for anything new, James finished, understanding dawning in his eyes. The quantum entanglement network, we can use it for more than just communication. Sarah was already moving to the central control station. Every world they conquered tried to match them technologically, force for force. But humans, we think differently. Her fingers flew across the holographic interface. Kavor, you said their ships are essentially one giant neural network, right? Learning and adapting as they fight. Yes, but... Kavor stopped, their four eyes widening as they realized what she was suggesting. You want to use our communication network to interface with their combat intelligence, but the processing requirements would be enormous. Good thing we've got about 7 billion human minds to draw on, James said, catching Sarah's plan. He was already sending out emergency broadcasts through their global network. Every phone, every computer, every connected device, we can link them all through the quantum network. What happened next would be studied by military historians for centuries to come. As the harvester fleet pressed their attack, humanity launched a counteroffensive unlike anything seen in the galaxy's history. Billions of connected devices, guided by millions of human users, began feeding conflicting data into the Harvester's neural network. Teenagers playing video games found their controllers linked to drone defense systems, their gaming skills translated into real combat maneuvers. Chess players' strategies were uploaded into battlefield tactical systems. Musicians' understanding of rhythm and harmony was used to create interference patterns in Harvester communication frequencies. The effect was devastating. The Harvester's greatest strength, their adaptive neural network, became their weakness. Unable to distinguish between real threats and the avalanche of human-generated responses, their ships began to lose coherence. Their formation is breaking down, Cavor reported, their armor shifting through patterns of amazement. Individual ships are starting to act independently. This has never happened before. But the real turning point came from an unexpected source. Dr. Emma Chen, Sarah's mother, had been monitoring the battle from her quantum computing lab in Singapore. She recognized that the Harvester's neural network operated on principles similar to human consciousness. Working with a team of neuroscientists and computer engineers, she devised a way to introduce the concept of doubt into their collective intelligence. They've never questioned their actions before, Sarah explained as she implemented her mother's code. They've never had to face the possibility that they might be wrong. The effect rippled through the Harvester fleet like a virus. Ships began hesitating, their perfect coordination dissolving as individual units started processing moral implications for the first time in their existence. Some turned their weapons on each other, while others simply withdrew from the battle. It was at this moment that Cavor's resistance fleet finally arrived, emerging from hyperspace behind the confused Harvester armada. Caught between humanity's psychological warfare and conventional attacks from their rear, the once invincible invasion force began to crumble. Multiple ships surrendering, James announced, his voice filled with disbelief. Others are. They're requesting dialogue. This is unprecedented. Sarah watched as the remaining Harvester ships either retreated or powered down their weapons. Humanity hadn't just survived. They had done what countless advanced civilizations had failed to do. They had broken the Harvesters not through superior technology or military might, but through the uniquely human combination of innovation, cooperation, and the ability to think in ways that transcended pure logic. Hours later, as the cleanup began and the first diplomatic contacts were established with the surrendered Harvester ships, Sarah found herself back in her original dig site. The pottery shards she had been examining just weeks ago seemed trivial now, yet they represented something important: humanity's long history of adapting, innovating, and surviving against all odds. Cavor joined her, their armor now a peaceful blue. "You know, when I crashed here, I thought I was bringing your world a warning. Instead, you've given the galaxy something far more valuable: hope." The Harvesters weren't defeated by weapons or technology. They were defeated by the one thing they could never understand: human creativity and human empathy, Sarah added, thinking of how they had ultimately won not by destroying the Harvesters, but by teaching them to question their own actions. "We didn't just fight them, we changed them." As the sun set over the desert, new alerts were coming in from around the world. The quantum entanglement network, originally created for defense, was being repurposed for peaceful applications. The programmable matter technology was being adapted for environmental restoration. The time dilation fields were being studied for medical applications. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged not just victorious, but transformed. The stars above no longer represented a threat, but an invitation. Earth had taken its place among the galactic civilizations, not through conquest or submission, but by demonstrating that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in superior firepower, but in the power to imagine different possibilities and the courage to pursue them. Sarah smiled as she watched a shooting star, actually a resistance ship, streak across the darkening sky. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity had proven that they were ready for whatever the universe might throw at them next. After all, That's what humans did best: adapt, innovate, and turn seemingly impossible challenges into opportunities for growth.